Welcome, everyone. Dear participants, welcome to 7th International Symposium on Multidisciplinary Studies and Innovative Technologies. In this session, we have a keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker is Associate Professor Tolga Çukur. Welcome, Dr. Çukur.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Before starting his presentation, let me give you some biographical information about Dr. Çukur. Dr. Çukur received his bachelor's degree from Bilkent University in 2003 and his PhD degree from Stanford University in 2009, both in electrical engineering. He was a postdoctoral fellow at Helen Wills Neuroscience Institute at University of California till 2013. Currently, he is an associate professor in the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering at Bilkent University. His lab develops computational imaging methods for understanding the anatomy and function of biological systems in normal and disease states. He is the recipient of Tibetak Career Award 2015, Outstanding Young Sciences Award in 2015 and in 2017, IEEE Turkey Research Encouragement Award in 2017, Science Heroes Association Young Scientist of the Year Award, Middle East Technical University Professor Dr. Mustafa Parlar Foundation Research Incentive Award, and also a Research Encouragement Award, and also he is a senior of IEEE. Welcome again, Dr. Çukur. If you are ready, you can share your screen.
So I don't see the share option. If you could. Oh, now I see it.
You can see, okay. Okay, we can see your screen, and if you are ready, you can start.
Okay, so I'll try. So I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation. Before I start, I'm going to go quickly through some of the recent research in computational imaging with mostly examples from my lab. So there are numerous data processing tasks in medical imaging that can be categorized as inverse problems. These can be related to the way acquired data are mapped onto actual images, the images getting analyzed to extract some quantitative tissue properties down onto the endpoint of the pipeline where you need to make a diagnosis based on all of the evidence captured in the images, along with, of course, additional information about the patient. Now, many of these tasks that I mentioned are ill-posed inverse problems where traditional methods have been used up until recently, and deep learning methods are now replacing those because they can offer improved performance. And I'm, specifically work on magnetic resonance imaging. So I'm gonna showcase the example applications from MRI. In MRI, we capture high-dimensional data. We look at the same anatomy under many different lenses to emphasize different tissue attributes. So there is very high-dimensional, a lot of data captured per subject. And at the same time, this data has limited signal-to-noise ratios. So it's not too high quality to inspect by visually. So this setting of high-dimensional data with limited SNR causes many ill-posed inverse problems. In most cases, while conducting an MRI exam, we collect images that are corrupted with artifacts or high levels of noise, or we collect images that are a subset of the desired images requested by a radiologist, and then we need to go back to recover high quality and high diversity protocols, starting with compromised protocols. So one task that we can do is, starting with noisy and artifact containing images, we can try to go back to clean images, and we can ask a neural network to do this. Or if you have only a subset of the desired images requested by a radiologist, you can impute the missing data by image-to-image translation tasks, so that you improve your downstream, diagnostic and other quantitative analysis performance. Or you can segment certain different tissue compartments with an image and maybe run diagnostics on these segmented maps at downstream stages of the processing pipeline. Now, regardless of which task we are looking at, in deep learning, we have the benefit of being able to approach problems in a data-driven manner, where you select your mathematical substrate, which is a neural network that will solve the transformation that you desire. So you feed some input images, and then you desire some high quality, high diversity output images from it. After you put together a large training set and learn the parameters of this model, then at validation time, you can fix the model parameters and run inference on new data sets. So this is the main framework, and there are numerous problematic phases of this framework that an end user must address, one of which is selecting the network architecture. There are now a zoo of different options that everyone can select from. But up until the last couple of years, convolutional neural networks have been predominant in this area, given their efficiency in learning from even modest-sized datasets. And how they work is basically they use compact local filters, and they use the exact same filter weights to search for certain image features everywhere across the image. So you take your filter and traverse it across the image to create a map of feature presence. Okay, and this is efficient because you use the same filter weights across all of the image. Okay, so your filter weights are shared. Furthermore, you only look at local neighborhoods in space, so you don't need to span across the entire image. But this is not very compatible with the long-range context that is present in medical images and natural images in general, because there can be tissues that are far apart from one another in an image, but still contain correlated signals because, for example, they contain similar shapes or similar tissue compartments. Furthermore, depending on subject or disease type, there can be sample-specific variations in these shapes and contextual relationships. First, we know that medical images follow a 1/f spectrum, which means that, yes, neighboring pixels are strongly correlated, but these correlations don't die away as you go towards large distances. And second of all, depending on which disease you are investigating, these correlation patterns do change. So they are not fixed from patient to patient. So what we need as a solution to be able to fully exploit this information is some algorithm that can do both adaptive and non-local processing, both things that conventional CNNs cannot do. And the answer, at least in recent years, has been with the introduction of vision transformers, which are adaptive and non-local networks. And the way they do this is, instead of local filters, they use filters that span across the entire image. So they do non-local processing. They also adjust the weights of their filter using an attention mechanism that changes the coefficients depending on the input. So this gives us the ability to do adaptive processing. So attentional filtering is very powerful because it increases the degrees of freedom in modeling, but it also introduces computational complexity beyond what convolutional neural networks are costing us. And as a solution, in the literature, we see hybrid architectures becoming popular, where you combine convolutional layers with transformer layers at proper resolutions to get the best of both worlds. So to get the performance benefits without spending, or having to deal with quadratic complexity of vision transformers. And I'm just gonna, discuss very briefly several examples. This is a transformer convolutional hybrid model for MRI reconstruction. Here, the idea is we build a generative image prior for high-quality MR images using an adversarial approach, but the building blocks of the network are combining convolutional and transformer blocks to model long-range context. And then you can obtain much better reconstruction performance compared to previous convolutional methods, as manifested here in the lower errors in the below maps. You can also use these ideas to mix CNN and transformer blocks for image-to-image translation tasks. For example, in this case, you may go after the task of imputing missing images in a protocol This could be different contrasts within an MRI protocol, or this could be predicting what the CT image of a subject looks like if you only had access to their MRI images. And again, the hybrid convolutional transformer model is better than, in most cases, both the convolutional ones and the pure transformer ones. Okay. And going even further downstream, we can talk about running diagnostics. For example, in the case of functional MRI, we can diagnose cognitive, neurodevelopmental, or neurodegenerative disorders. And we can come up with a hybrid transformer architecture that receives the functional MRI recordings of our brain responses across time and space, and then runs diagnostics regarding whether a disease is present in a subject or not. Okay? And we can interrogate these models to identify the regions in the brain that are responsible for disease occurrence. Now, a second problem, so we talked about the mathematical substrate, which is the neural network architecture, but a second problem is how do you train those architectures? We see that generative modeling is becoming very popular in recent years, but there are a number of different approaches that we can use. The most popular until recently being generative adversarial networks, but we are seeing a shift towards diffusion models in recent years. And the reason is this. So conditional models, conditional GAN models have been very popular in computer vision tasks because their adversarial loss improves capture of high frequency details in images. So they produce much more realistic samples than other models. But the problem is because they rely on a game theoretic interplay between a generator and discriminator network, they often can be quite unstable, which leads to poor sample quality or diversity. To solve this problem, recent diffusion models are transforming the image generation process in GANs, which is done in a single shot through a single forward pass through the network, into a progressive approach where you need to take thousands of forward passes through a network to be able to produce an image. So this more gradual approach, of course, improves the stability of the training, and it produces more reliable results. But the downside is we need to calculate 1,000 forward passes through a network, which slows down, and we lose the benefit of deep learning that it can offer very fast inference. And again, the solution is to go for a combination of previous era solutions, whether autoencoders or adversarial networks, which can offer very fast image generation, with the stability of diffusion models to get the best of both worlds. And the models that I'm going to exemplify are actually combining adversarial and diffusion ideas in a unified body. Here we have a model for MRI reconstruction tasks. So you receive images with artifacts and noise, and you want to clean them up. So you can use this prior based on diffusion to offer much higher quality in reconstructions compared to either pure diffusion models or pure adversarial models. And we can again talk about the task of image-to-image translation with these hybrid approaches. And we can say that we beat, using a hybrid model, both GAN models and pure diffusion models. And lastly, down onto diagnostics, again, talking about functional MRI data, we can use a diffusion model now to explain the predictions of diagnostic classifier on brain responses and therefore this, neurological disorders. The idea here in using a diffusion model is we want to change an original fMRI scan of a subject to fool and mislead the classifier that has been trained. And when you can do that with minimal changes in the recorded brain responses, you can look at the differences between what we call a counterfactual sample and the original fMRI scan to understand which particular brain regions and their responses at what time points cause a change between different disease predictions. And this is a way to explain deep neural networks, which are otherwise known as black box structures. And the proposed model that I mentioned here gives characteristic explanations that are much better aligned with known patterns from the literature for a particular disease. Now, what is common to both the novel learning approaches that I mentioned, as well as the architectural backbones transformers, which have become pervasive both for computer vision tasks and language models, as we see today, is that they are almost billion parameters in size. And when you talk about such large models, they land us into a rather inopportune zone in the modeling landscape where we have really complex models but very limited data sets, which means we are sure to overfit. And in papers, you see numerous approaches. We do data augmentation, cross-validation, regularization, but these mostly sweep the problem under the carpet because the real task, the real problem of generalization is you want to generalize to a completely novel data set that has been collected at different hospitals under different settings. When you split your own data set into multiple chunks to do cross-validation and regularization, that doesn't really stress the model sufficiently. So you think your model is doing fine, whereas indeed it's overfitting dramatically to your local data set. So the real solution to this is to collect expanded data sets from multiple different sites by establishing a collaboration. And the canonical approach for this until recently has been that all sites collect their data, anonymize it, and send them to a central repository. And afterwards, with the right approvals and agreements between the sites, you can post this publicly so that everyone interested can download this large central data set and build their own models on it. Of course, this is a useful approach, but there are numerous handicaps in establishing these repositories for every kind of task that you can imagine. The problem is, first, there are a lot of patient privacy risks when you need to ship and then host data, imaging data of patients and maybe healthy subjects for extended durations of time. So you need to run across many ethical and legal regulations. Furthermore, hosting terabytes of data for extended durations of time for public access requires large and costly infrastructure. So there are a lot of administrative and maintenance issues. A recent paradigm in machine learning that aims to address these limitations is federated learning, where local data collected at site A or site C or site B, whatever, never leaves the sites that they were collected at. So you don't want to share these data openly with any other site or publicly. Instead, what is getting done is all the sites train local copies of model architecture using their own resources, and then ship the trained models to a federated learning server. So we only transfer model weights. Afterwards, the federated learning server takes a global average using some relatively simplistic algorithms of the models coming from individual sites and calls this the global model. Now, the global model gets sent back onto the individual sites so that they can continue their local training. If you think about this paradigm, what is getting done here is we never transfer imaging data. No one has access to your imaging data. So you lower potential privacy risks, and you don't need stringent ethical or legal regulations to run collaborations in this form. And what you share, let's say in a public repository or between the sites, is only model weights, and that's going to consume at most megabytes of data, not terabytes. So you need very simple infrastructure to store these models, and there is less overhead for maintaining a repository. And with this approach, we can ask the multiple sites, for example, to collaborate in training an MRI reconstruction model, so that now we have access to much broader data sets than we could if we were to work on our own. So you get much more generalizable models. And you see the effects of generalization in this federated model compared to others, which elicit some artifacts. Or you could collaborate for running an image-to-image translation model with similar reasoning. And you can impute missing contrasts from the acquired ones, again, much more reliably and generalizably because now you're collaborating across multiple sites. And to sum up the discussions, I can say that we are seeing a dramatic shift towards bigger models, whether it's related to the neural network backbone, such as transformers, or new learning paradigms, such as diffusion models. We are pushing the boundaries with billion parameter models. And that scale of model actually is the only way you can cope with that is to acquire large and diverse data sets. It's very difficult to do this on your own if you are a single imaging site or even a hospital. So the sustainable path going forward is to do collaborative AI across multiple imaging sites. We want to do this in a way that doesn't create a lot of bureaucratic burden and privacy constraints. So federated learning could be a very promising paradigm to go forward, where we communicate models, establish collaborations without having to transfer data that is private and that involves a lot of regulations. And if we can put these two building blocks together, I think that we have a bright future for automated imaging driven by AI algorithms in the background, and we can tackle numerous tasks from reconstruction, translation to segmentation and classification in a generalizable fashion, so that once you obtain an algorithm, you can ship it off to any hospital, any setting that you want, and it works as intended. And with that, I'd like to conclude the talk and thank you, my funding resources. Acknowledge them and thank you for your attention.
Yeah. Dr. Çukur, thank you very much for this great presentation. And on behalf of organizing committee, I would like to thank you for your scientific contribution to the Congress and hope to meet you in next Congresses as well. Dear participants, do you have any questions about this presentation? Okay, as I can see, there are no questions. Thank you very much again. Now I am ending this session. Thank you.
Thank you.